Hey, thank you again, everyone, for being here and for coming to our session this afternoon. My name is Brian McGraw. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect with AWS, and I'm excited that you're here with us this afternoon. Just a couple of logistics, emergency exits toward the back and up front, restrooms outside in the hallway, and ask that if you would, if you have any devices, one or two people probably have a cell phone in here. If you would, set those to silent, just so we can kind of, have a good session as it goes on. And last but not least, if you would, be sure you've downloaded the app, and we would greatly appreciate your survey, your feedback on this session. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Shirley Ivan. Shirley is a Senior Cloud Advisor with AWS, and she's going to be talking all about Cloud Center of Excellence.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Beautiful day outside, so glad, I think I lost my mic. Glad to see you're all in here trying to hear about the different aspects of your journey to the cloud. And what we're going to talk about today is purely non-technical. So if you're expecting a technical talk, this is not going to be it. This is really about the harder part of your transformation journey, which is the people side. And through this session, we're hoping that you're going to get some ideas, some approaches, and some best practices from the journeys of these two gentlemen, who will talk to you about what they've done, what they're doing right now. We're going to ask a few questions. We're going to go through some questions that I've got, and then we're going to leave some time for you to ask your questions. So I'll ask you that when you're asking your questions, if you can keep them general and of interest to the entire audience, but we will be available over the next today and tomorrow, to answer any of your specific questions and lead you through or provide you with our advice and our feedback around those topics. So with that, I guess we'll start. Samir, if you want to start with your story.
My story? I'm Samir Shah. I'm the Director of Enterprise Applications at AARP. AARP is one of the largest not-for-profit organizations in the US with 38 million members and between 50 and 70,000 volunteers, and we serve the 50-plus community. So our journey to the cloud, I want to go back a little bit. When I started with AARP in 2014, I had a team, and we had the same challenges that most people have. We were not delivering on time. It would be not the greatest quality when it got out there. We would have to work with our business to say, okay, I thought you meant this, and I delivered that. And all those typical challenges with, uptime wasn't great either. And so for the first 60 to 90 days, we sat down and said, okay, we'll do all this technical stuff. Re-architected the platform, went open source, and got some of the low-hanging fruit out of the way. And that was great. But that wasn't the only thing that really would move us forward. So as we started to look at the way we worked, and we worked with different projects coming in, we started to treat our platform as a product. So we took a look at it and said, okay, if we're going to own this as a product and a platform, how do we as a team really look at things in a different way? So we came up with some guidelines. As what are we going to do to work as a team and work differently and hold ourselves accountable? Right? So we came up with some guiding principles, and they were simple things, right? So check your ego and titles at the door, right? Doesn't matter if I'm a director or you're a dev, it doesn't really matter, right? Everyone has an equal say. Build in quality and security. It's not somebody else's job, it's our job, right? So we want to design it at the beginning so that we don't have all of this issue that we have to rework afterwards. All ideas are welcome. That was a really big one, right? So people think you've got to have these massive big ideas to make a big impact. It's really these small ideas, and I'll give you some examples later on, that made a huge difference. Okay. Zero retaliation. So if there was something that I was doing wrong, tell me about it. If you can't tell me, go and tell my boss. But, do it with respect. And computers do repetitive tasks, people do valued work.
That's a good one.
So intelligent automation, right? So not everything can be automated, but things that are repetitive, let the computer do, and we're going to do the value-added work. And then the last one, which is the thing that I really care about, is we're one team. We succeed together, and we fail together. There is no finger pointing, totally blameless, and that way everyone's accountable. It isn't, oh, John didn't do that, oh, Sam didn't do that. Everyone's accountable, so there isn't a finger pointing thing that went on. So what this allowed us to do was really get out of our own ways and create a culture of safety where people could take a risk, people could try new ideas without the fear of failing, without the fear of, oh, I'm going to mess something up. And as we were going through our journey, our time to delivery suddenly started getting better. Our uptime went from 95% uptime. For the last 3 years, it's been 100%.
Wow.
And what that allowed us to do was to really start to take even more risks and even more innovations. So fast forward 3 years. We were asked to deliver a brand new business capability. And we'd heard about cloud, we'd heard about AWS and serverless and all this great techie stuff. So we were like, why don't we try it? Why don't we see what happens? We've got nothing to lose. And my team will tell you I'm pretty demanding. So I said, we're going to set a goal, 8 weeks. 8 weeks to get trained and do it. And I remember AWS account manager saying, okay, you're crazy. I said, yep, because if it doesn't work, we're going to move on to plan B. And plan B was do it in a traditional way in our data centers and do everything else. Guess what? It worked. We were able to get these services out. They were efficient. Our business was like blown away. And my team was just, this is great. We can get things fast. We can do things in a way that we don't have to work nights and weekends. We can deploy during the day. We don't have to stop the users from using the system. They could deploy while they're using it. So when we did our second product, that took 6 weeks. So now the team's like, okay, what else can we start doing? The problem with that is, we were doing it in small pockets. And, my boss, my CIO, they were like, how do you scale this? You can't keep on doing small pockets. How do you get it across? And that's when we started to think about our center of excellence. What do we want to do? How do we scale this? How do we put in and build in the compliance, the security, the operating model, so that we can really build an enterprise platform to offer these services, not just for my product team, but to every product team within AARP. So that's how we started on our cloud journey.
Very interesting. Morgan, what about you?
Well, first of all, after hearing that, I think I want to go work at AARP. It sounds like an amazing place to work where you can innovate. Ours started a little different. So we're a government agency. And what I had heard, because this was my first government job, I heard that governments moved a little slower and were a little more resistant to change. And what I found was, we had a lot of really great people, but some of them just didn't know what better looked like. I was recruited to come to the state from private sector. I previously ran and built data centers for GoDaddy and Expedia because I came to work for a private sector governor who wanted to transform. He wanted to run Arizona like a business. So we had to transform, we had to leapfrog. We could no longer incrementally improve. One of the things that I walked into, as I talked a little bit at the keynote this morning, was 4 years prior to me coming, we had a major outage, a multi-day outage at our state's oldest and largest data center due to weather. Gary, our chief operating officer, was there to see it and to live through it. He has the scars, he can show you later. But we had that kind of the PTSD of like, data centers are scary when you're the one owning it, when you're the one operating it, and when things out of your control, like weather. I don't know if anybody lives someplace where there's weather that is out of your control that could take down your infrastructure. But that was something, even as resilient as Arizona is geographically, when I got to the state and I started looking at our data centers, I honestly was scared. And I said, you know what? I'm one phone call away. And my boss had told me, okay, make sure you have a jacket and a tie and a suit in your office, just in case you ever have to go out and talk to the press about why we have an outage. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, that is the reality that you're working in state government now. So I did everything in my power to say, let's minimize that risk. What does that mean? So the first decision I was faced with was, here's multi-millions of dollars of equipment that we want you to purchase that let's say my former team wanted me to purchase to double down and reinvest in our mainframe. And I said, why would we do that, knowing that of the 700 state buildings that my Department of Administration manage, it wasn't the worst building in the fleet. That would be the governor's tower, because it's not politically popular to give yourself a new office. But it was the second to worst building. $15 million in deferred maintenance. It would take another 50 to bring it up to tier 3 data center standards, which we were not going to get, right? As a state government competing against cops, teachers, doctors, we were not going to get that money. So I said, before we go out and buy a new mainframe and put it in that building, why don't we explore what else is possible? And the reality is, and you guys probably face this as well in public sector, you have lobbyists and vendors going to talk to your governor and your leadership and saying, we can do it better, faster, cheaper than your team. And we know better, and I know some of my peers, when I meet them at NASCIO, have outsourced their entire IT to vendors. And I've learned the hard way that maybe they oversold it. Maybe their talk was worse than their delivery, or better than their delivery. So what we did is say, we're going to give them a chance. And we looked at that mainframe and said, if we can get this out of our data center, I think that'll open us the doors for us to do other things. We ended up moving forward, successfully got that out in the first year. And then we said, okay, for the rest of this equipment, let's come up with a plan. So we had a contract with a third-party colo. We said, in order to get access to these cloud providers and to really push our migration to full capacity, we need to open up the network pipes. As Gary likes to say, we had to increase the commute for the compute. So we had to open those up. So we moved our state network, big, scary, right? We had all this fiber plant coming downtown to our manholes, and believe me, one wrong splice and you got an agency down, and it's hard to get them back up. So we were thoughtful about that, managing through that. And then once we got off the mainframe and increased our connectivity, we said, we're going to shut that old data center down. Like on our watch, we're going to get out of it. Now, what we didn't know is what percentage we would be able to move into cloud. So we had, in that colo where our network was relocated to, we had 20 racks. I said, if we do this right and we're thoughtful about it, we're never going to fill up those 20 racks. And spoiler alert, we haven't, even 2 years later. But the leverage that we had in a federated model is we had oversight, and we had basically final authority on spend. So there's about 1,500 IT employees in the state of Arizona, another 500 contractors. Less than 10% of those actually report to me and my team. But if any agency wants to spend $25K of their money on IT, it has to come, they have to fill out an investment justification, it has to come to my office, we have to sign off. And we just drew a line in the sand and said, we're not approving hardware unless you prove why it can't be in the cloud. The best use case I had heard was the Department of Corrections CIO came to me and said, the way Arizona geographically is, you have 80% of the population and 20% of the square footage, downtown Phoenix, surrounding area, which is, I think, larger than LA metro area. Our prisons are in the most remote corners of the state. And he said, I think the access control for the prison doors should be on-prem in case somebody cuts our cloud connection. I said, you know what, I've seen enough Prison Break movies. I'm going to agree with you on that. and what I don't want is my name on the paper. It said, CIO Reed said, go to the cloud, and now we had a prison riot, and everybody escaped, right? So I said, okay, I'm going to sign a cloud exception for you. But I haven't seen another one, honestly, in the years since then that is why they can't. So they had to go through some learning. They had to talk to not only our team, we have an internal team, but also our external team, our partners at AWS, our partners at local integrators, other providers, and say, just come to me and say, this is why you can't cloud it, and then we'll sign off. And they haven't been able to do that. So long story short, we exited that data center, shut it down in 18 months. First 6 months of planning, last 12 months of execution. 75% was moved into AWS of the total 80% that went to various clouds. The majority was AWS. And now we have the wind in our sails, and the governor's buy-in and the chief operating officers, all the agency directors report to my boss. He said, we're all going to get out of our data centers. It's the right thing for the state. It's the right thing for our citizens. And we have about the rest of the plans are due end of this month. I think we have 94 out of 110 agency cloud plans due, or submitted. We have 16 left. And then we have a year to execute on that and get our state to the cloud fully.
So I use the term Cloud Center of Excellence, but really organizations call it cloud teams, call it centers of expertise. It's really a personal, depends on the organization and what language works. But what were the skill sets that you look for? So maybe Samir, when you started, what are the types of people that you're looking for to actually formalize that team, that organization that's helping you drive cloud adoption and helping you get to the cloud?
That's a good question. So when we started, what we wanted to do was not just involve tech teams.
Okay.
So we involved HR, finance. We knew it was going to take changes in the way people do work, changes in job roles, training, the way we do our budget cycles. So this was more than just an IT thing. Okay. We also, spoke to the business and said, hey, what is it that you want out of us? What are the problems that we really want to solve for? In terms of the actual team, we started off with, obviously, my team.
Okay.
And we'd been doing some stuff. They were engaged. They were enthusiastic. People were like, hey, what do these guys do? They're kind of cool. They're not getting paid all the time. They're having fun. Okay. But we knew that we can do it just as a product team. We had to involve the networking team, the operations team, the security team, the QA team, and make sure that everyone understood what we were doing, why we were doing it, and make it exciting.
Okay.
So we involved a pretty large set of people that we knew were influencers that could motivate others to kind of follow along and take a lead.
And did you share those guiding principles that you developed as a team with the rest of the organization to help them understand what was driving you and how you were organizing?
Absolutely. So at our all hands meeting,
Okay.
that was the first thing that I shared. Why are they important? What does it mean? How does it make a difference to the team? And not only did we share them, we were able to use examples of things that had come out of those things. Right? So one of the items that we spoke about was automation. Automation came out of a silly idea that I had. I'm like, man, we were on these calls all weekend, and we're chatting on our Slack channel. It'd be kind of cool if somebody could tell a joke once in a while to break the craziness. And so I developed this little bot, wrote a little API to get a joke out, and started to play with it. And after my team started laughing at me, saying, "This code is really bad," and they refactored it. Monday morning, we had a bot that could actually start to integrate with our delivery pipeline.
Oh, wow.
And that grew and grew, and within 6 months, it was doing 100 hours worth of work that we were doing manually. So effectively, I kind of got 2 extra people on the team, and didn't have to worry about vacation and taking time off.
Yeah.
But it was an idea that was spawned because of these guiding principles.
Okay. What about you, Morgan? Like from a culture perspective, changing from on-prem to something that you no longer have control on, how did you change the culture around that? And how did the team react to that?
So we had been undertaking a number of cloud initiatives. We were modernizing some of our business applications with Salesforce. We were putting all 30 email systems into Google. We were trying to get all our infrastructure in AWS and others. And we had to bring in skills that before we came, the government employees didn't have. But we talked to them, and it really started with talking to our people and saying, we want you to be part of this transition. We want to keep you, and we invested in them. We invested in training. Brought out boot camps, and we still have study groups to this day where people that haven't got certified are now coming in to help get certified. I'm sitting in on some of those myself to just to make sure that's happening and just become more familiar with the technology, because there's over 100 different services in AWS, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of now new tools in our toolbox, but really those are going to enable us to solve problems in a different way. A lot of folks come into IT, and it's kind of ironic. IT changes so quickly, whether it's security, infrastructure, app dev, et cetera. And yet, there are some folks in government who I've met that have okay, we're doing the IT the way I did it 20 years ago, or the way I learned it back in the day, and that's fine. But ultimately, if we're going to deliver to our citizens the way they expect to be delivered to, if we're going to meet them where they're at, mobile apps on their phone, same-day delivery, those kind of things, to say, hey, we're the government, but you have to drive downtown, fill out paper, or put a stamp on something and then wait. They just don't want that. And there was a mind shift of trying to understand that while government, let's just say citizens, customers, in some cases don't have another option, they still are a customer and they still need to be treated as a customer. So we had to modernize our skills, modernize our tools so we can meet those customers. And I'd say we're going to learn this together. We hadn't done this. So Gary and I talked about it when we had a director of cloud ops open that he hired, and then we also had a cloud architect that my CTO hired. And we had to be thoughtful. It's like, as much as we'd love to learn on the job, we're all learning on the job ourselves, right? So we had to hire some experts, some folks that could go to our agencies and our architect and say, here's the benefits of cloud, here's why you should consider it, here's what's in it for you. And we have a great team with our AWS partners, and Greg and Adam and Tyler over there, who they can also go talk to those agencies and tell them the same thing. It's like, well, if you don't want to hear it from us because you think we're sales guys, it's like, we're really just trying to help you, but you can talk to another provider, you can talk to us. We're going to tell you the same thing, that there is a lot of benefit in this. But at the same time, then they say, okay, now how do I do that? Randy's been great in trying to get us, not only helping our agencies migrate to the cloud, but if then they want us to be their remote hands for day 2 and beyond, we can do that as a service that we offer. But we had to kind of roll up our sleeves and figure it out. So we had to have that sense of urgency. Amazon calls it a bias for action. We set deadlines intentionally, because if we didn't, things wouldn't happen, right? And honestly, the first year, our cloud first policy was actually just a cloud first strategy. The problem with that is because, again, we're a federated state. I had agencies telling me, well, I don't have to cloud. I don't want to. In other words, you can't make me. I said, all right, what do I have the authority to do? Sign policy. Okay, it's cloud first policy now. You have a date by which you have to have all your infrastructure either in a cloud of your choosing, or prove to us that you can't do it, right? So we started that clock ticking, and now agencies, we've combined that effort, the cloud first directive, along with our mandate to get out of the data centers and say, get out of your data centers, put as much in the cloud as you can. And if you can't, that's fine. We'll document those exceptions, but then we're going to come back around, and trust but verify. Because fortunately, with a lot of agencies, we have 130 agencies, boards, commissions, departments are my customers. We had to have not only the boots on the ground to meet them where they're at. They're all in different industries. They have different problems, and there's plenty of different solutions for them. And just kind of become consultants and brokers in government. I'm not trying to do it for you. I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I am trying to help you get better outcomes for your citizens.
So as a shared service broker, did you define certain guardrails that were common, or certain templates or certain patterns that could be reused across the commonality of all government?
Absolutely.
Right? What were those kinds of examples? I think people want to know, where do they, for a lot of people, they're getting started and they're not sure where to start. So how did you start through that process, and how did you
Good question. So we reached out to Amazon originally because I saw this at Expedia where I was before, and I saw this in the state. The ease of use, there's not a real barrier to entry to get your credit card and go on the site and spinning up stuff. Right. And we had agencies that were, whether it's experimenting in the cloud, whether it's using production workloads, we didn't know about. So first was just getting our arms around that. And AWS was great in bringing us this enterprise discount program, which allowed us to basically tag, okay, these are all part of the state infrastructure, and here's all the domains for our email addresses. If any accounts are tagged with these, some are in GovCloud because they needed to be for security, some weren't. Some were in commercial because for those use cases, like Department of Tourism doesn't need that much security. They want everybody to have access to their data. Come to Arizona. But we had to first understand what we had, and then kind of put those guardrails in to say, okay, there's best practices. There's things we've learned in exiting our first data center that are reusable, that are effectively now playbooks that we can give to our agencies. We're not asking them to do something we've never done. We're just asking them to follow in our footsteps. We can do it for them if they want to, as a shared service, we can cloud for them, or they can hire third parties and do it themselves. It's just, the destination is the same. How they get there is up to them. But just having that visibility, and that those guardrails. The other thing we did that I would be remiss if I didn't mention is security. So some of our vendor partners are FedRAMP certified, some aren't. And what we couldn't do is wait till everybody was FedRAMP to say, we can now host your stuff in there. Even if, let's just say it's a third party that is built on AWS, right, we still need certification that they are using the tools and the best practices, right, to secure the data. So one of the things we did is we have a modified FedRAMP, we call it ASRAMP or AZRAMP. It's on our website, agencies can share it, download it. But what we effectively do, it's a trust but verify. So if you say, let's say, for example, you have intrusion prevention, we say, show us a screenshot of your dashboard, show us that you have it. If you say you have a policy to notify customers if you get a breach, send us a copy of the policy, prove it. And I think about 80 different organizations have been certified to safely store state data in cloud, whether they're built on AWS or not, but about 8 failed. And we have, we've had customers say, well, I'm an autonomous agency, I can do what I want. I want to put my agency's data in there anyway. So I said, okay, here's a risk acceptance form.
Right.
You sign that you are accepting that risk. I'm signing that I'm acknowledging that you are accepting that risk. And the first time we did that, 2 weeks later, I won't name the agency, but that vendor that they trusted had a breach of 2.1 million Arizona citizen records. I literally had it in writing. It says, I told you not to do that. So my name wasn't in the paper, but theirs was. So, making sure, we start with security. It's written in our procurement code. If any vendor comes along and says, we're going to store data for X, Y, and Z, they stop, they talk to our compliance people. We make sure the security is good. Then we move forward with the contract and the migration.
And that skill is part of that team that you've built, right? That's a common approach that's kind of learned from that that breach to say, okay, here's what we're going to do on the next one, how to potentially avoid it or look for ways to make it better for everybody else.
Yeah, and we've had to do that training. It wasn't just for our server administrators, it was our database administrators, our network, our security services. We had to show them all that there's different tools in the cloud, there's different visibility. Just make sure that we're all going for this ride together.
So Samir, you talked about a product model, and that's as a former product manager, that's usually something that you do when it comes to an application or a service. But really, you took that model and applied it to your platform, and you used that same. So can you maybe explain to the audience a little bit about what that product model, how does it work for those that work in IT and maybe not as familiar with that?
Yeah, so just as Morgan was saying, what we wanted to be able to do is provide an enterprise platform. And you don't be reinventing the wheel for every single team that wants to use your services. So there's a framework that we used with AWS and our systems integrator that, there's certain shared services and certain things that we just don't compromise on. Security, compliance. You will get this out of the box. There is no if, buts, or thens. And that's totally verified. And there's no way people can make changes unless it goes through a process. From a guardrail perspective, you want to give your teams that are developing and delivering business value enough leeway to do things, because as Morgan said, 2,100 services, I think, so far, and counting. So you don't want to be a showstopper too.
Right.
So what we've done is, with this framework, is built a model where there are certain things that we can trust but verify, and there are certain things that we just aren't going to compromise on. That allows the teams who are delivering value and delivering the applications to get creative. They can do and use new services. As long as it comes through this model, it's approved, those are the services that we really want to use. And from a difference between a project and a product, in my opinion, is with a product, you look at everything and not just what am I going to deliver for that project. To me, a project has a start and an end date. A product kind of goes on for a life cycle until that life cycle diminishes and say, okay, we're going to retire that product and move on. So there's a longevity with a product that a project doesn't have.
And we talk a lot about two pizza teams, and I think part of that is that autonomy to make decisions aligned to that product, right? So they own their product life cycle, they own the decisions based on, I think, talking to your customers and getting the prioritization from those customers to do what they want, when they want it, kind of in a more agile fashion. I think that also comes with those product teams, doesn't it?
Right, and we use the two pizza team concept. My team would say 3 pizza teams because I typically take a pizza myself. What that allows us to do is to really get more efficient. What we found is having a small team that can start doing, it is a lot easier to pivot and move on from. Whereas before, we used to sit around the table, go to meetings, plan, and we'd kind of be in this planning cycle for what seemed like weeks and months. With the two-pizza team concept, having representation from different areas, so it's more role-based and not people-based. You can make decisions that are strategically correct. And because the guardrails are there, you're not really going to make mistakes that put the organization at risk.
And I think we talked about it. Part of the excitement and the change that you're enabling is allowing those teams to develop these features and then share back their experiences and share back perhaps the things that didn't work. So where they're I don't want to say the big F word in terms of failure, but where things may not have worked out as expected. You have the opportunity now to do that a lot faster and then learn from those things that didn't necessarily work. And I think that's part of that culture change that you're enabling through your small teams and your organization.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that anyone in this room who's a techie knows, it's going to fail. Whether it's software, hardware, network, it's going to fail. And the question is, how can you recover quickly, and how can you make it self-healing? Gone are the days where I'd be watching my phone. When's that page going to go off? It's 2:00 in the morning, or I'm at a kids event. Now it's like, oh, something went wrong. Yep, it's recovered. It's great. Just watch a stream. It doesn't matter what it is. It'll go from AZ1 to AZ5 or across regions, and it's seamless. And what that allows us to do is get even more creative with our solutions, because we've reduced our risk, and with the level of commodity that's available through the cloud providers now, we're pulling our commodity levels as high as possible. Why do I want to deal with servers? Why do I want to deal with things that you guys are really good at dealing with? I want to be able to deliver more, faster, better, in a way that keeps our business going.
And back to those guiding principles that you establish, it makes it okay to fail. And then as long as you're recovering quickly, and you're pointing back to those and reinforcing those, I think that again changes your culture and really starts changing not just the IT team, but the rest of the organization as well. And I think, Morgan, you're reaching out to many organizations, and how do you engage them, and what are the, what benefits have you seen that translate to support those organizations?
So when I first started at the state, I went out on a customer visit. I went to 20 different agencies. I was the new guy in town. I said, tell me what we're doing well, tell me what we're doing wrong. If we suck, you can tell me. I'm not going to get offended, because I just inherited this team, but I need to know what we can do better. And some of them would say, well, nobody from your office has ever visited me. I don't even know what you guys can do for me. And some of them that were customers had given us some feedback. But what I realized is that if the only way that my customers are going to find out what our shared service capabilities are is if I go visit them, this is not going to scale. So I had 4 different groups talking to the customers, but they weren't talking to each other. So I actually reorged them and created a group called Business Engineering, because we feel there are no IT projects. There's business projects with a technology component. It's like, what are you trying to solve for your business? What are you trying to solve for your citizens? What's your agency mission, and how are you trying to achieve that? And how can technology be an enabler? For example, Department of Real Estate, sweet little old lady is their director, Judy Lowe, love her to death. She said, my realtors can do everything on their phone except renew their real estate license. She's like, I want to build an app. I said, that's fantastic. Do you have money to do that? No. It's like, well, actually getting together to try to do a statewide app, we'd love to have your 40,000 realtors a year, 80,000 eyeballs on this app, so they can cross-sell and get other services, right? So this group of, we call them engagement managers, they are assigned a portfolio of about 20 agencies, and their job is to make like 3 contacts a day with those agencies. What are you working on? How can we help? Do you need, whether it's that service broker model, do you need the many vendors that are in our portfolio to come help you do that? Is there something we can solve for you? But it's kind of like, what is your agency trying to be when they grow up, and how can technology enable that? So we had to put that intentionally, and then because if they want to spend $25K or more on IT, they have to go through that. So that's their front door to the process. We made it a new automated front end for them to give us their IT plans, and then one year we found that 13 agencies were all going to go out and do the same thing. They were going to get an e-licensing solution, and said, instead of you guys spending the little money that you all have, do it 13 different ways, what if we bring you all to the table, we do an RFP, get you, an enterprise software that can actually deliver this. They did that. They had seats at that table. They awarded a vendor. We had to then kind of ride shotgun and make sure that vendor delivered for them because this is kind of our idea.
Right.
It was a little bit late, a little bit over budget, but ultimately this platform launched prior to, I think, the 5 other projects similar nature that had been started. We spent less money, and it's built in the cloud. And now we have agencies saying, hey, my vendor, is upsetting me. Can I join your platform? Sure. So we have agencies 14, 15, 16 we onboarded last year. We have 2 more that are in the pipeline. Just an anecdote of listening to our customers, being obsessed with their success, and then finding things that they were going to do anyway. We just kind of guided them to a better solution. But now that those solutions and tools are built in the cloud, we can leverage onto those. We can find the reusability. So if you apply for a business license, if you apply for a technology, whether it's an architecture license, a nursing license, a physical therapist license, a lot of the workflow is really the same. I get some information up front, I give you something on the back end of it, which is a decision, a certificate, but the approvals and things are the same. So we just, we have those reusable components in a cloud solution, so the cost for the next agency to do it becomes less and less.
And you've got those people skills that are getting those lessons learned and kind of building and getting those efficiencies. So,
and the biggest thing from that is just, it was something that it's kind of like, we've never done this before either, but trust us, we're going to help you do this. Once we were able to successfully launch that, we earned the credibility of we didn't profit from it. I mean, I actually had to come out of pocket a little bit to help the project get back on track, but I made an investment in them, and now they are more trusting with us, and they are coming to us and saying, what else? You solved this problem for me. You helped modernize not only my citizen experience, but my employee experience. Their employees were pushing paper, and now they have a couple clicks and they can do their job. They can do their job from their phone. So they love us now. So it's like, hey, what else can you do for me? So it allows us to deepen that conversation and see other ways it can go.
So before I go to the audience, just one last question, which is, given where you are in your journey, and this is to both of you, if you can change something that you did, what would you do differently? Is there one thing that kind of in hindsight, doing something sooner or different or better? Is there any one of those?
I'll let you take that.
It's for both of you.
I knew that was coming. That's a tough one.
Is it?
So one of the things that we have started doing over the past 2 years is, going back to failures, is publishing our failures.
Okay.
So we actually send out a report to all of our consumers on my platform and said, this is how we did, this was what worked, this is what didn't work, why it didn't work, and I really wish we'd done it sooner.
Okay.
Because what that allowed us to do was build a trust. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't so much, oh, you guys are failing, it was, hey, if we gave you money to do this, that means that these business objectives would go up. I'm like, yes. So I wish, knowing what I know now, we'd done that sooner. It really would have made a big difference. But that was again a culture shock, right?
Yep.
I'm letting people see the sausage being made.
I would take the same example except flip it. I think celebrating our successes, not just in the agencies that happened or locally in my team, but statewide. I would have done that earlier. I would have done that sooner. We learned the lesson that we were having all this success. Our agencies were successful, but there were still big pockets of the state, even just other state employees in this federated model that didn't know about it.
Okay.
So, for example, when we closed our data center, our largest organization that had the biggest footprint there, Health Services, they ended up putting I think 80% of their own workloads into AWS. We had this big party for them that had little cloud balloons. They got their agency director to come down and print out certificates and shake everybody's hands. It was great. And one of the things they were saying in the success metrics is just it was one database license, right? I don't know if it was an annual or 3-year license, but it used to cost them $950,000 to renew this database. Once they were able to right-size that database in the cloud in AWS, lowered it to $150,000. Wow. Now, I heard that because I went to their party. Some of my people on my team heard that, but it's like, how do we get that win out to the rest of the agencies? Like, if you have, whether it's Oracle, whether it's SQL, whether it's whatever database license, I think we have 27 different database technologies, no joke. Wow. Legacy technology, anyway. You guys can do this too. And we actually intentionally turned off another position in our organization. I don't know, it was project manager, BA, but we turned on a technology communications person. We're going to have somebody that's going to feed our social feeds, write newsletters, publish articles, help us do slides for presentations like this, to say like there's a lot of good things happening in Arizona as a result of this cloud journey, but we need to get that word out. We need to do better at not for things like this, but internally for our customers to let them know this has happened. It might be in the agency next door.
Right.
But if you don't know about it and if you're still fearful or apprehensive, let us help you. Hey, go talk to that director over there that did it, that modernized their business application, that made that mobile app, that moved their infrastructure to the cloud, or that saved that licensing fee. Let them tell you that you don't take my word for it,
Right.
take our other customers' word for it, and just kind of publish that.
And that communication is key, not just for everyone outside the team, but for the team itself, right? It
Yes.
builds the confidence, it builds the interest, the excitement.
Yeah.
It keeps you coming. I think we talked about it, right? So it keeps you coming to work, and you may be 30 years in, you may be 30 days in, right? It's that excitement and that fun of going to work. So we've got about 10 minutes left. So why don't we take some questions from the audience? There's a mic in the center of the room. If anybody wants to. If you don't mind doing the mic, because we're recording and they won't be able to hear without the mic. So we'll just.
My name is Frank Barone, and I'm an independent investor, and I'm invested pretty heavily in a significant amount of the modernization activities that have been occurring in some of the smaller companies. Now we're at that stage of longer range planning with the successful modernizations. The question we're asking is the sustainment issues. So now we have the first phase of it, so we're doing concurrent maintenance and concurrent sustainment. So from your perspective, gentlemen, and from your perspective, Shirley, what do you see as the vision of how we're going to maintain and sustain those transformations and modernizations that we have put in place, meaning the people, the money, the funding, the budgets? We know that the underlying services that AWS has are going to be continuously sustained by their developers, and that's going to reflect back to you and back to me. What's your vision on that?
I'm not sure I heard the full question.
I'll take that. So we're talking about how to make it sustainable long term. So there's a couple things. One of the things that we learned along this cloud journey is we had an agency that was actually early in the cloud that tried to get funding for the future year. They were told they couldn't get it. But what they explained to the budget office was that in a pay-as-you-go model like cloud, if we cannot pay, we cannot go. And I think it was about $5 or $7 million that they were asking for. So what they said was, if we can't get this money, it's fine. We're going to have to turn off our application. And they had just spent 3 or 4 years building this application because there wasn't an off-the-shelf alternative, so they had to do it. But they did it on cloud. And the budget office said, like, that's unacceptable. We can't have you turn it off. It's like, well, then find the money. They found the money. And once that happened, other agencies realized the power in changing that from CapEx to OpEx. If I can bake in headcount, if I can bake in my light bill, my water bill, my utilities, and this is what it costs to keep this agency operating, and now I can do that with my compute, my storage, my network, right? It's a lot easier to budget for. And to be honest, I've had too many meetings with the budget office, but those folks would rather have a sustainable run rate. They don't want $5 million, 0, because frankly, they don't get told early enough, and they'll go in and say, hey, budget year, whatever much the state or the city or the county spent last year, we can spend this year, right? Except last year, 5 agencies asked for $50 million, but this year 10 agencies are asked for $100 million. Like, where did that come from? Now we got to find some place to take it out of, like teachers, like cops, like doctors, right? We don't want to have to make cuts like that. But if you can say the cost of operating these applications for these government entities to affect these citizens is this, they can say, well, is it too much, right? Well, let's go do a third-party study and baseline it against other state cities. Let's figure that out. But you get out of the business of that variability. You're not dealing with the spikes. Because unfortunately, that's happened too much, at least in our government. We have agencies that, 4-year refresh cycle, you wish. 5-year, maybe. Typically, these people are having to ride hardware for 7 or 8 years. By the time my agency gets the call, hey, our extended maintenance expired, and we can't find another vendor to extend it. So like, if you don't let us buy new hardware, that was the first year in the state, the outage is going to be on you, right? And we can't buy spare parts, and okay, fine, right? But now we're saying, well, migrate to the cloud. There's a dozen ways you can do that. But once you do that, you have that cost certainty, and budget likes it. And I think my vision is if I can get a day that I don't have an on-prem server in the state, so if the lights go out in Phoenix, my customers don't notice because none of their stuff is in that floodplain, is in that power outage, and we can get this government services. You can have government in your pocket. You can do everything with the government that you can do with Amazon, for example. That's, am I going to be in the government long enough to see that through? No. But while I'm here, I'm doing everything I can to help turn that into reality.
Good. Next
Sorry, this is Charles Carter. I'm with the state of North Carolina. We are we're obviously behind where you are in Arizona, but one of the things that I heard you mention was the talent and kind of ratcheting up the talent certifications, study groups, those types of things. Did you have any partnerships? One of the ideas we're contemplating is we're wealthy in universities in North Carolina. Did you have any success in partnering with universities in Arizona that maybe could be a roadmap for us?
Absolutely. So what I didn't mention on stage today, because Teresa had mentioned before I got up there, was the Arizona State University is the most innovative university 4 years in a row now, and they are in our backyard. We have meetings. They'll come to my shop. I'll go to theirs, and we're looking at multiple ways we can partner. We are talking about having them potentially be our security, one of our security vendors, because they are securing. Let's just say students do more devious things on school networks than state employees generally do on state networks, so they figured some stuff out. They also have an amazing mobile app. They launched it to their freshman class with zero public relations, zero marketing, and I think it spread to the 90,000 students, in some cases graduating students that have, right? So they are one of the 4 vendors that we have right now building the proof of concept for the state's mobile app. We have the Cloud Innovation Center at ASU, powered by Amazon.
Customer Innovation.
Customer Innovation Center. We call it the KIC in downtown and in Scottsdale. And we bring use cases. They're not only open to the state, they're open to any government entity. It's like if you're the city, county, whatever, bring your problems, and between the power of AWS's cloud and the big brains at ASU, whether they are the students, the grad students, the professors, we'll solve problems for you like that. And it's kind of like a consulting agreement. We're starting to ideate on what are the problems that we have that, like, just frankly, we can't solve at our state level. And let's take advantage of these folks. And I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you guys, the folks at ASU who are here, their CTO and Deputy CIO are here today, Chris and John, and they would be happy to talk to the friends at North Carolina, because I think, I go to state CIO conferences, they go to education conferences, and try to set up a model like that. But Amazon is willing to, has shown us willing to make investments of, like, let's help you guys get a lab together and, figure some stuff out. So, it's kind of win-win-win. ASU gets some real-world examples that they can have students help solve problems. AWS gets some use cases that could potentially run in their cloud services with, thousands of services behind it. And we get some problem solved faster and potentially cheaper than we would, doing it the traditional way. So
We have a talk tomorrow actually on the KIC, and
Awesome.
ASU is actually there. So in the culture track, if you can check
Go to
into
that.
there's an overview of that. And I think other different state and local governments actually work with different higher ed universities and colleges to actually solve smart city challenges and various things that we're doing. And there's a lot of case studies, not just in the US, but in Canada, we're doing stuff like that globally, right? And there's lots of opportunity. And there's the other opportunity is also on the training side, right? It's training the next generation of cloud infrastructure architects and analytics and machine learning specialists. And so there's a lot of synergies there as well.
Yeah, we have a similar program. So we partner with the University of Illinois.
Okay.
We have a tech lab out there in the Innovation Center in Champaign, Illinois. The same thing. So we use grads to do proof of concepts, try out new things. If we wanted to, hey, let's do a little bit of machine learning. Get a couple of grads in. They have skills that we would never be able to kind of hire, and that gets us moving. It really does make a huge difference, and that's a really good way of moving it forward.
So we've got time for one last question.
One more? Okay, great. I appreciate it. My name is Ricky Bedoy. I'm with the State of Maryland's Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, the correctional industry side where we, build things like ACI does. Now, my question is, this question goes to you, obviously, Mr. Morgan. Does ACI are they on AWS? Are they using it for their ERP solution?
I'm not sure who that is.
not that I know of.
Okay, because I know you said earlier the DOC said no. Okay. The reason I ask is we're trying to do that. A lot of other state entities are, and I was maybe you can give me some information or some ideas of how to go about it. I know from your side as well as from mine, how to deal with that. It's kind of a complex thing, with security and maintaining the FBI database and such. So, anyway, let me know. We'll talk later.
Yeah, let's see me after. Thank you.
So thank you all. Whoops, fall off the chair. Thank you all for your those great questions, for listening to us. I think, this is a long journey. I think you guys are 3-4 years in. It's a lot of lessons learned. If you're new to this, don't be afraid, right? There's lots of knowledge. We have got lots of information. We're around the next day, to answer questions. I'm at the booth tomorrow. If you've got any specific questions, come by. This is something that I'm very passionate about, working with organizations to enable that change. I think it's for people that go through it, they come through on the other side a lot happier and a lot excited about where they're going and very passionate about it. We've got lots of great information, so your account management team can also help you with more information. We've got lots of best practices to share, and hopefully we got a little bit of tips and tricks and information out of the session. So with that, please don't forget to fill in your survey, and hope you enjoy the rest of the afternoon and the rest of the summit. So thank you very much.